to do more precise personalization, you need access to more precise data, right? And there's some, there's a lot happening there where the data is more available and accessible and so on. But as that data becomes more available, accessible, and granular, then we'll see that driving performance even more so.
Hi, I'm Greg Stewart, CEO of MMA Global, the international nonprofit trade association for CMOs who are focused on architecting a new future of marketing.
I'm Rex Briggs, an author, market researcher, measurement inventor, and entrepreneur.
So Rex, listen, today is going to be kind of interesting because we're going to talk about a very particular slice of the marketing world, right? This concept of commerce media, which is sort of funny because in some regards sort of feels like all marketing should be about commerce, but let's not parse that too heavily. Maybe our guest today can sort of distinguish that. It feels like marketers lose some focus around that. But listen, it's a pretty big growing area. It's super important for retailers, no question about it. A lot of those, listen, Walmart's on, the CMO of Walmart's on the board. A bunch of other marketer retailers are here. So should be kind of interesting today, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely an area that's growing very quickly. It's complicated though because you've got some challenges around fragmentation, especially when if you think about the commerce part being really close to the products and the product catalog. I mean, those can be incredibly vast and diverse, and figuring out which ones go to which people, and then how do you measure that, and what's your choice of what you could have still delivered to them. There's a lot of complexity to that, and luckily, for so many of those thorny issues, AI can help, and we've got an expert in that area here today with us.
Yeah, so good. So joining us today is Diaz Nesamoney, the CEO and founder, like 18-year founder, by the way, at Jivox. Mm-hmm. If some of you, Rex and I were just talking to Diaz before. We know him from way back when. But we're going to hear all the ways about commerce media is changing and how AI is helping to do this. Diaz, welcome to join us. Appreciate it.
Hey, great to see you both. Thanks, Greg and Rex. Excited to talk about AI and commerce media and all the stuff that's changing. Right.
Maybe start by unpacking Greg's question about what is commerce media exactly? Yeah. Who are the type of companies you serve? What are you doing for them?
Yeah, sure. So commerce media, I always think about how Amazon just out of nowhere suddenly built a really large advertising business and suddenly, really large. And so it has of course now expanded to practically every retailer out there and every brand trying to run campaigns. And I think it was and has always been about product sales data, right? Detailed SKU level product sales data. And, I always believed that, if you look at the waves of advertising, right? The first big wave was search, right? And search was what was someone looking for. And then we had social, which was demographic and who your friends were and what you liked and so on. But, product sales data is extraordinarily more precise than both of those formats, right? If you think about it, and marketing, after all, is ultimately about sales, right? And so that's what I think is super exciting about commerce media. And so any form of media that's powered by that data and that provides precise personalization using that data as commerce media. It started out mostly in retail, as you might imagine, since they have the biggest.
They have the data.
Retail data, yeah. But since then, a lot of large companies like the PayPals of the world, the Marriotts of the world, the United Airlines, et cetera, everyone said, hey, I've got detailed transactional data, whether it's booking hotels or it's booking flights, and that data can and should be used. So commerce media has expanded from just being about retail to really about consumer transaction data.
So when you think about that consumer transaction data, would you include the credit card companies in that area that have credit card data, or do you need to know it down to the SKU level? Because sometimes the credit card companies just know you bought something from a retailer, but they don't know the SKU level. How do you think about where the line of commerce media ends and something else begins?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the non-retail commerce media often ends up being kind of more at the cohort level, right? Because they may not have access. And it's interesting also to think of those commerce media platforms as not being endemic in nature, meaning they don't sell the products that the advertiser offers up, right? So while it is all being called commerce media, I think retail data and retailers who actually sell the products that the advertiser is offering are, I would say, a lot more important in the grand scheme of things. But if you're a non-endemic brand looking for a more precise audience of luxury hotel bookers, for example, Marriott can provide that to you. So I think there's levels of granularity that's different, but ultimately it is about more precise consumer data.
So, Diaz, let's kind of jump right into the AI component. So, first off, you're a CS grad, right? You originally got your degree in computer science way back when. So, good place to start. And I've seen some of your videos. I know you can definitely talk tech. There's no question about that. So, how does AI fit into all of this? Why does that matter? And listen, obviously, you were doing this long before at least AI, as we know it today, existed. I mean, I don't know, but were you doing machine learning from the very beginning? I don't know. Give us a little background here and sort of your context.
Yeah, absolutely. When we founded Jivox, I was always thinking about how can AI really provide a level of personalization which translates to better engagement, conversion, sales, et cetera. That was always sort of the vision. When we started out, there wasn't much data to begin with. This was 18 years ago, and even the DMPs back then didn't exist. And slowly we had DMPs, we had CDPs, we had, data got a little more organized, more granular, and so on. So we've been on that journey, to sort of leverage data and greater precision with the data, and ultimately about applying it to content and creative, right? So how can we generate content and creative? Now, early on, it was a fairly manual process because you had to sort of build, individual, creative templates, and somebody had to go figure out what content to get in there, and then you had to go connect it into the data. It was very rule driven, so you had to specify if the user lives here, show them that, if they engage with this particular product. So, but the concept always was about using data to get greater precision. But I think with AI now, we have the opportunity to use data every step of the way, right? Generating creative and content, doing the personalization, doing the optimal delivery and optimization based on conversion. So I think AI is a huge, not just a huge breakthrough, but also hugely relevant to the world of commerce media. I would say advertising in general, but very specifically also commerce media, just because you have a lot more very precise data. AI works great when you have lots of data and very precise data. So I think it's particularly well applicable to commerce media.
When you're working on the data, are you working with basically this commerce media company? Maybe it's a retailer, maybe it's somebody who like you said, United Airlines, who has the data and says, okay, we want to figure out how to make the maximum use, or are you working with the marketer who wants to sell something through the commerce media, or some of both? Give a little idea of how that works.
Yeah, I would say some of both. So I think in the early days of retail media, the brands were very new to it and they didn't sort of know where to start. So it was more the retailers pushing forward ad products, saying, hey, we can deliver with its sponsored listing ads or eventually display and video and other types of ads. So a lot of the opportunity and tech need was on the retailer side. Since then, as commerce media has expanded and grown, it's shifting a lot more to the brand side, because now brands are saying, hey, we're getting great performance. Question is, how do we scale it, right? Initially, we were just running on Amazon. How do we now run it on Walmart and Target and the 20 other retailers that we sell our products through? So I would say right now the interest and focus is a lot more. And on the advertiser side, it's also true that, the say 10 largest retailers probably take 80-90% of the media footprint, right? Just because of the way retail operates. So I think the opportunity, at least for us, has been a lot more in going to the brands and helping them run across these retail media networks.
Is there a challenge with getting the data to where you can share it across platforms? Or, I guess as I think about different brands, like CPGs have always had a hard time because they don't see the customer, the retailer does. Of course, if they go direct to consumer, that's easy. The DTC ones are sort of in a great place because they get all the records. But some of the walled gardens and retailers are making that harder and harder to see what's happening. Talk about that a little bit of the world about how do you get to that first party data on who your customer is? Because that sounds like that's your key ingredient to activate this.
I think that, at least initially there was a lot of reluctance on the part of the retailers to provide that super granular data. And obviously the more granular, the more precise the personalization is and how more effective the ads themselves are. But Amazon's been kind of the bellwether, right? Like, they've been extremely innovative in how to make that data available while protecting privacy and so on. I mean, if you look at, you log into the Amazon dashboard and stuff, the detail and just conversion data that you get from there is phenomenal, right?
Yeah,
So
they changed the game, really. I mean, because
they
before
really did.
everyone was Walmart was very protective,
Exactly.
and Amazon's like, hey, we'll be your partner and give you the data.
Exactly, and I think that the other retailers, obviously they have a lot of innovations. For example, they have physical stores and so on. They have some real advantages there, but at the end of the day, advertising is about performance and about data. So if you sort of say, I'm just going to provide you very highly aggregated audiences and give you very highly aggregated conversions, then you end up being at a disadvantage to Amazon, right? And I think Amazon's taken the approach of, hey, we want to give you as much data as you need. We'll protect the data to make sure it's privacy compliant, to make sure it's not, repurposed for other purposes. So they've built a really great system. And I think the other retailers are slowly sort of saying, okay, yeah, maybe we need to provide more granularity. We need to be more open about conversion data that can then be used to optimize ads and so on. So it's changing. Almost every week we see a big change in how retailers and commerce platforms are approaching it.
Hey, Diaz, I got a question for you. So listen, Rex and I have now, I don't know, Rex, at least 25 years for you and I together on this journey to how do we really make marketing and in particular advertising work that much harder? I mean, it's been kind of the main theme. How do we create more impact? So listen, you originally started, if I have it right, you originally started kind of on a DCO orientation and then moved into this broader retail, media kind of dynamic. In your years of work, what's kind of caught your attention about how to really boost marketing or advertising performance? Listen, maybe it's DCO, maybe it's retail, maybe it's AI. I don't know. As you look, 18 years you've been doing this, you've got to have some good pattern recognition after all this time, right?
Well, especially to narrow that down on the, I think we've been debating the importance of the audience and getting to the right person, and the message, getting the right message. As you're answering Greg's questions, you think about the insights. That's often the thing that he's trying to solve for, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting, right? So my background, prior to Jivox was in enterprise software, right? So I built software for large enterprises and so on. And, and I thought that was sophisticated and complex and so on until I came to advertising. And what I found was,
Wait. Rex, did he just say, is he going down the path of advertising sophisticated?
I think he meant complicated, not
complexity.
sophisticated.
That's what he was finding a nice way to say we don't know what the hell's going on. Right?
Yeah,
okay, good. I thought I should check that.
It was incredibly complex and incredibly inefficient, right? In terms of the number of people and processes and handoffs and spreadsheets and, all of that, right? So it was kind of
workflows a mess.
Yeah. Yes, workflows and and so on. And obviously we've had a lot of automation from the DSPs to the CDPs to DCO platforms and so on and so forth. But we're far from, or have been far from, really truly streamlining and solving it, right? And at the risk of oversimplifying it, I think of it as you have content and creative and you have conversions, sales, right? So how do you connect the dots between those two and introduce relevance in the middle of it? Make it as precise as possible, make it as relevant as possible. You get better conversions at the other end. But if you look at the workflow, just to launch a campaign, and it has been that way for quite some time, it's incredibly complex. It's not complex because no one knows how to build the tech to simplify it or not. It's because it's inherently complex because of so many moving parts. Now, along comes commerce media, which actually makes it even more complex, if we can think about that. Why? Because, the workflow and specs on Walmart are completely different from Amazon and Kroger and Albertsons and, et cetera, et cetera. The channels are channels now we didn't think about in-store. How about that? Oh, that's a new channel. And so complexity is increasing, and my belief, and that's what we're trying to focus on, is that AI is really, truly what can simplify all of that, right? Meaning that the traditional ways of building the software and connecting into these systems and managing the workflows and so on has reached the complexity is overwhelming it, and it's constantly changing also, right? So AI is very good at basically taking very complex workflows and problems. As long as there's a lot of data, which advertising does have, you can essentially scale and simplify it and reduce just the number of people involved in launching a campaign. I was speaking to a retailer the other day who said it takes them about 60 to 75 days to launch a campaign. I said,
Crazy.
Oh my God. Like,
Crazy.
what happens in those 75 days? How many people are involved? And, it's a lot of people, a lot of processes, and a lot of hands-offs, and compliance checks, and this check, and that check. A lot of that can and should be automated. And that's where I think AI is a game changer, particularly for commerce media, because I believe we've crossed the threshold of complexity to where it becomes unmanageable.
Is that part of where you're focused? Because I'm Chief AI Officer at Claritas, and we just had a training session today on N8N. We had the Zapier CEO on the podcast recently. Those are two companies that are doing a lot of the workflow automation. And I agree with you. I feel like everyone needs to learn these new AI workflows and automate because it can save so much. Are you doing something special in that area? Or are you using some of those tools to help make the whole world better? Or how are you thinking about AI and workflow?
Yeah, so what we did is we took some of the dynamic creative and personalization tech that we always had and said, how do we basically apply AI to every step of the process, right? So first it was about creative and content, right? It takes too much time and too much effort to build up creative. And in retail media, it's even more complicated because I got to build creative for Walmart and creative for Amazon and all the different formats they support. So we first started applying AI to creative. And one of the misconceptions, I think, with AI amongst brands and so on has been that if you tell AI, hey, go build an ad for me, it'll build an ad for you. Well, it will, except that's not an ad that's going to be compliant with your brand guidelines. It may use the wrong font or have the wrong logo. And in retail media, when you send it to Amazon, Amazon's going to be, no, the buy at Amazon logo is not right, and they're going to send it back and reject it. So we said, let's use AI, but restrict it and put guardrails in the AI so that it always knows how to generate creative correctly, right? And so that's an example of taking what seemed like an impossible problem. One of our first large brand customers was working across 75 retailers and about 4 to 5 channels per retailer. We're like, this cannot be solved except through the use of AI, right? Mm-hmm. But that's one part. And that's probably the most well-known part when you say applying AI.
That's classic generative AI-driven,
right.
AI creative manufacturing, but within constraints or trained to respect the brand guidelines. Okay.
Exactly. So then the next step. So how do we personalize
By the way,
it?
are you doing that on the fly, or are you doing that pre? What's
we do some of it on the fly. Things like, for example, you have to remove the backgrounds from the content that's coming in. You have to kind of resize some of that we do on the fly. And some of it is basically user-driven. So somebody might say, hey, I want a specific lifestyle background in this creative template. And then they can prompt the AI and it'll generate it for them. But it's mostly generative AI. The only thing we started using Agentic AI for a different purpose. So what happens is when you start providing content to customize a template, for example, that content could make it go out of compliance, right? Because it may have something in it that Amazon doesn't like, Walmart doesn't like. So we're using Agentic AI to check against the compliance specs for the retailer. And that'll flag and say, hey, that image you uploaded, has some copy in it that Amazon will not accept.
So you build an AI to check the AI.
To check, yeah, exactly. And so we're using a combination of generative and Agentic AI for the creative side of things. But then you go on to the personalization, which, in commerce media, it's all a SKU level, right? So I need to know which products to show in the creative based on who I'm delivering the ad to. So there we basically use AI to do recommendations, product recommendations, and audience recommendations, right? So, okay, I have a product, who's the best audience for that? If you log into the Amazon UI, you'll see literally hundreds of audiences, right? And, they have different names or whatever. Like, for people that are experts in Amazon, they may know exactly what to pick. But can AI, based on its past results of campaigns that have run against those audiences know that, okay, if you advertise this product against this audience, you're going to get the best outcome, right? So that's the second part of it. There's also AI in terms of workflow automations, right? So, for example, you want approvals for creative. You have to send it to 5 different people, and they have to say yes or no. They have to, so that's an example of workflow automation through an agent. And the last part, which is sort of the last mile problem, and this is quite interesting, and this is the part that's in our AI labs. Our AI labs team is working on, is basically the shopper, or the shopping, agentic shopping part of it, right? Because that's also changing. Increasingly, consumers are going into an LLM and saying, hey, where do I buy this light winter coat? I know it's going to maybe fall soon. I just want to think ahead. What are some of the new styles coming out? And then they can do their discovery there. And a lot of the LLMs are adding shopping agents into that. So you can say, oh, okay, where can I buy this? Or where's the best offer for this type of product? And I can do one click and purchase, right? So we're looking at that entire journey saying, where is it that we can apply AI to simplify the workflow, to automate very manual, time-consuming, and expensive tasks? And that's really what our product, DaVinci for Commerce, has been about.
But Diaz, I don't know if you answered my question, though, which is, where's the greatest gains to be had? So across what you've seen, I outlined some of it. You can go any direction, you can break it down any way you want, but, is it more personalized creative that's really doing it? Is it just better placement?
Yeah.
Is it media alignment? Like, what in your experience is really driving extreme performance? And by the way, I'm going to ask you to put numbers to the performance, too. I'd like to know.
Yeah, so I think today the greatest gains are on the creative and content scaling, right? If you want to get it down to a SKU level and you want it to be able to run on different platforms, different media, that's why. And it's not to say that
So you talk about the workflow part of it when you say scale?
no, the generation of creative, right?
Yeah.
And that's not to say that's where eventually the biggest gains will be. It's partly because that's where it's possible to introduce automation, because to do more precise personalization, you need access to more precise data, right? And there's some, there's a lot happening there where the data is more available and accessible and so on. But as that data becomes more available, accessible, and granular, then we'll see that driving performance even more so, right?
So just to play it back, you're saying the bottleneck right now is the ability to generate lots of different creative variations down to the SKU level. And so whether that's the longest term gain, to go to Greg's question or not, that you got to solve that first before you can do a lot of the other
exactly.
things.
If you can't produce precise creative, then what's the point having precise
what
data?
percentage of marketers that you're working with, or that you pitch or have on your list, do you think have that fully automated? And if it's not fully automated, if you were to take some of them, like what percentage of the marketers do you think have that part of the workflow automated where
for the most part, they don't, right?
Yeah, that's kind of my sense too.
So let me give you an example, right? So we're working with a very large global beverage company, and so they work with about 75 different retailers globally, right? And what was happening was basically, in order to so retail media, obviously the data is quite precise, and you can get a lot of precision from a targeting standpoint. But then the costs were escalating so much when you started to try to go to the SKU level, or try to get it to run on different channels and retailers and so on, that they had to sort of say, okay, well, maybe we'll just do category level creative, right? We'll show a collection of drinks versus the specific drink that we know this audience likes, right? Then you're not getting the best out of retail media, right? Because you're just showing kind of a generic creative against very precise data. So, and why did they not go to the SKU level? Not because they don't know that that's important. It's because the costs start to escalate significantly. And especially when you have to do it the right way for Amazon and for Walmart and so on. So we solved that by basically saying we can automate that generation and produce it in all the different, formats, and check for compliance and make sure, the ads can be generated. Once that's done, of course, now the question is, okay, can I then leverage more fine-grained audiences. So we think the first sort of no-brainer cost savings and efficiency comes just from that, right? Going from, category level to SKU level, and to be able to handle all the different formats and channels. For this particular brand, the cost savings was, like 80-90%.
Yeah, it wasn't even feasible for them to do what you wanted to do
they
without
couldn't have
making
done
a
it.
sleep, right?
Yeah, and they were looking at, even at the category level, what they were spending right now to produce that creative and content. It was just astronomical, right? And if they projected out and said, okay, as we start doing this across many of the 75 retailers, it's just, and the cost ended up being 25% of their retail media budget. Right.
Wow. Is this mostly, which is, we used to call that working and non-working media, and that's a lot of non-working media, right?
Yeah, exactly, 25%. And it's going up. It's not getting better. Right?
And AI is really the only solution to that. Now, we've seen, at the conference that Greg and I just were at, he had me host a panel on the video side of AI-generated video. One of the folks there demonstrated that they could create pretty good social influencer ads in less than an hour using the latest generation of VO3 from Google. We've had Firefly and others on Sora. He is pretty exciting. What you're describing, I imagine that you have that nailed for display. How close are you to having that nailed for video, to where that's that's fully ready to go?
we're doing a lot of work on that, and I think one thing that we became aware of as we started working with customers is, generating a video from a prompt is very easy these days and actually comes out with very high quality, but generating an ad is a whole different story, right? That Amazon will accept or that Walmart will accept is a whole different story. So we're focusing a lot more on that. I mean, there's many different tools out there. They have really cool demos that show you, hey, I can describe a scene and, maybe even describe a product that I want to place in that scene, and that's all great. And it's super exciting to just see that, because you can see how that's going to change, how all of this creative is going to be produced. But when you come down to running that, somebody's going to be on the brand side is going to, oh, wait, no, you can't do that. It doesn't have our logo on the 25th frame or wherever it's supposed to be, right? And then let's say you do all that and you send it to the retailer and they say, oh, no, you can't, you use the wrong Walmart logo or whatever, right? So there's a lot of these issues that have to be solved before it can scale. Demo, hey, it's available today. You can see it, and it looks really cool and very powerful. So that's what's exciting. And the technology is there to generate video at scale using prompts and using information fed into the LLMs. What we're doing is saying, okay, how do we take that and then make sure that what's generated is brand compliant and retailer compliant? Otherwise, it's not going to scale. Otherwise, you're just going to take that video, hand it off to a creative team again, who's going to have to edit it and make it work for this.
And then your cost balloon again, and you're
you're back to where you started. There's no particular advantage to doing that. But yeah, we're working on video now. I think we've got a very, very strong product on the display side across all formats, and next for us is video.
But I don't know, it's just me. I'm still struggling to know, where's the real, is it creative? Is it the targeting? Is it the better? I don't know. I'm trying to really understand how marketers drive greater performance. I mean, I think you've said getting more personalized at the SKU level, so I got that. But I still don't know how I'm matching that up to audiences.
Yeah, so today the way that works, and the way we do it is we allow the user to essentially say, okay, I want to run a promo campaign for these SKUs or these products, right? So you can basically generate the creative, and then we embed those products into the creative and generate it, and it's ready to go, and it's compliant with the brand, compliant with retail, it's all good. Then basically you essentially have to select the audiences, right? So you go into, we have APIs into Amazon and Walmart, and so we could say, okay, these are the audience I want to run it against, right? And the audiences today still, although that's changing, are getting more and more granular, but are still not one-to-one. So it's not like this person shown this particular SKU. but it could be that this person belongs to a cohort of people who tend to buy this product typically or buy it frequently, etc. So it's at that level. So when you tie that to that audience, you've got personalized creative, tied to a very specific audience, and the performance, works. What we hope to be able to do more and more is to automate even the selection of the audiences and hoping to get at more and more granular data. And that last mile problem still exists, right? Like, how do you optimize that further using AI? Well, you need the conversion data, the sales data. You have that from Amazon today, but with the other retailers, it's early days right now. I mean, the Trade Desk announced a CAPI, which allows retailers to onboard sales data from their stores, and for them, the bulk of the sales are happening still in stores. So you need that conversion data. So I think and
you need the conversion data related back to the cohort that you can buy it on, not just the count by zip code, which is what I've seen in some of the platforms, right?
Exactly. So the plumbing is being worked on, so to speak, there. We're ready. We know how to use that data to optimize. It's not a problem, but the plumbing isn't there yet. But when it is, we'll be able to apply AI on that and essentially improve the performance by just looking at what's converting well, what isn't. You can do that in Amazon today, handily, because it gives you that data. But with the other retailers, there's still work to be done. So, Greg, to answer your question, maybe it was a long-winded way by which I answered it. It is about the data ultimately, right? And I think retail media is growing and scaling and super exciting. And, maybe at small to medium scale brands are seeing. When you spend the time personalizing your creative and delivering it to certain audiences, you do see the lift. But the real breakthroughs are going to come when that conversion data starts becoming available, because that's what AI does really well, is when you give it that data, it can, and this is in some ways why Meta and Google have been so successful, because it's a bit of a closed system. They have the data. They've been able to sort of let the algorithms kind of get better and better at it. But I think retailers can and will get there.
Yeah, it's a little bit of I think Amazon deserves a lot of credit, because they've been much more open. They've been more progressive about showing the data, and they're forcing marketers to think about, where do you want to put your budget? Do you want to put your budget where you put it and it's blind, you can't see what's happening? Or do you want to put it in a place where algorithms like yours can optimize and make the results better and better over time? So I think it's an important topic. If you had a magic wand and you could wave it and make a wish for the ecosystem, I imagine opening up the data and sharing that data back, so you have the return path linked to an ID graph, or at least to the cohorts, would be your first wish. What would be your second wish?
Well, I think the second wish would be some standardization across retailers, and everything from the way the workflows to data and so on. Because if you look at any industry that has grown massively, right, often there were some standards behind it that made it easy to implement, it made it accessible to.
I wrote a lot of those standards, by the way. Yeah.
Well, there you go, right?
Yeah, Greg was at the IAB to make that happen. I did some of the research on the ad sizes.
There you go, right? Yeah, I was involved in some of the
deal.
IAB ad sizes, but not to date myself, but I was on the original SQL Access Group committee. This is like 20-something years ago. And SQL is taken for granted as every possible database. But that's what grew that industry, right? And I think in this industry, it helped a lot.
Yeah.
So we need better standards.
It was also proving value that it was better than it was anything else. That's what Rex did, because he founded multi-touch attribution as a measurement technique. That's what really helped change things.
Exactly, and I think the industry needs to come together.
Yeah.
It's not.
But what are those standards? What are those standards that needs to be done? Yeah, I'm a trade association now. Tell me, maybe I'll go do them.
Yeah. So he's ready to write the list.
I'm typing. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're working with one of our customers to. So as I said, that holy grail, or the last mile problem, is the attribution conversion data coming back to platforms like us. So today what happens is we go to brand A and brand B, to retailer C, retailer D. The data, first of all, often it's not available, but when it is, it's all in different formats. Now, this brand has this particular, or this retailer has this particular field they will share, like which category does this product belong to. Another retailer didn't put it in there, forgot to put it in there, didn't think it was important. So now you've got different data sets. How do you sort of conform that together to improve campaign performance? It's a lot of heavy lifting, and it's very expensive to hire, database folks to glue all that data together, stitch identity together. So, we're proposing to this brand who actually wants to take that to other CPG brands, say, hey guys, let's all agree on this format, right? And it's very simple. It's like, if you're going to output sales data from your stores, just follow this format. And we can get together, debate it, agree on what should be there and what shouldn't be there and how to protect, whatever everybody's trying to protect. But once it's there, as a brand, I'm selling my products with retailer X, and I tell retailer X, can you please send me back the sales data? They're starting to, it's happening, and that's very encouraging to see, but in so many different formats to consume it and make use of it is quite challenging today. So I think the willingness is there, but without the standardization, every retailer is going to send it in a different format. Somebody's going to sit and glue it together. There's costs involved. There's time it takes. So yeah, that's just one example. The other could be ad standards, although I think that's harder, especially on-site, right? Because everybody's worried about their real estate on their website and where you can put an ad and where you can't. But, they all have different sizes and so on. Yeah. There could be some standardization there. There's, reporting and analytics, like how do you, compare performance in one retailer versus another, right? How do you standardize some of the metrics that should be done? Now, these are complex problems, but definitely ones that
if you have consistent data, it helps make some of those other downstream things.
Downstream, exactly, makes it that much easier.
Right? Yeah, I don't wonder if the ad size thing is a little bit more difficult to do. The ad size standard a little more difficult today.
I agree.
Everybody's got different platforms and they operate different devices, so that's another one. Hey, Daz, let me ask you another question around this whole thing. So, it's a question I often ask is, as the head of a trade association, out to try to solve market, what do you think? I mean, maybe you've just answered it here, but what do you think marketers, what do they most need in order to sort of double their investment into commerce media? Like it's just, theoretically, like, what do you think so I think you're going to say better attribution is the big issue. What else is slowing them down?
Well, I think, just the process itself, right? So even today, despite, there have been a lot of advances, to be fair. I think a lot of retailers have started to invest heavily in making things easier for the brands and so on and so forth, because their motivation is the easier you make it, the faster revenue flows in, right? So the incentives are well aligned. But it still takes a lot of time and work. So if you compare how long it takes to launch a campaign on Amazon, and then compare it to what happens with other retailers, it does take a lot of time and effort. Everything from not just getting the creative ready, which we talked about extensively, but getting it approved and getting it flighted and so on. There's a lot of manual steps along the way, right? Okay. So that's, to me, low-hanging fruit, right? The data and attribution problem is a more complex problem. It'll take time to solve it, and the standards have to evolve and so on. But in the interim, we can solve some of these fairly basic and tactical problems. And that's what we're saying. Let's take the low-hanging fruit first, and let's try to help create scale on the retailer side, on the brand side. And we are doing research on how to use AI if we had the data to optimize, how to, we're doing all of that. But, eventually when the plumbing is there to do all that, everybody will benefit from it. But I feel like there's some more basic things that marketers would want solved, and that would just increase the velocity of money coming to retail. There's a lot of money coming to retail media, surprisingly, even with some of these
even with
approvals.
the friction, right?
Yeah, but
I mean, this gives me deja vu, Greg. I was in CNET's office, in the early days of the internet, and they had a whole conference wall covered with these little note cards, and they counted 400 steps to be able to launch a digital campaign. And the big effort, I think, Greg, when you were first starting to get involved, was to reduce that down down, and then it was the ad standards for the sizes, and
Yep.
then there was some of the data. So it feels like we need to repeat that journey, but we have to do it with AI in mind this time, which is the big part. Because if you can have like an MCP where my agent talks to your agent on approval, and if you've rejected it, my agent can understand why you've rejected it and can automatically try again. My God, that would save so much time and cycles, right? What do you think about that approach?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? If you look at every evolution of the industry, right, it has gone through this phase of like great ROI, everybody gets it, everybody wants to spend money, but there's not enough. The standards aren't there, the tech isn't there, the plumbing isn't there, so it can be quite painful. But the proposition is very compelling, so we will get through all of that. What we have in commerce media, just because of the timing of it, is a very powerful technology, and that's AI, right? I wish we had that when we were doing the IAB ads and programmatic and stuff. We didn't have that, so we had to sort of build everything from the ground up. I think coincidentally, as AI is coming together with the evolution of commerce media, I think it's going to grow much, much faster than anyone thought it would, because AI's will help automate all of the gnarly things that we have to deal with. MCP is a great standard, and I am glad to see the LLMs and others sort of starting to advocate for that, because the workflow issues are not going to get solved unless everybody says, okay, you want to interact with my system. We're talking to a very large retailer just this week about having an API so we can actually first of all, retrieve the latest guidelines. The guidelines keep changing, right? Every so often they're like, oh, no, we haven't changed it. And then automating that whole workflow so we don't have to call somebody, email, hey, can you share me latest guidelines? Or where's something got rejected? Well, wait, sorry, we changed our guidelines. And that's just an API. And today's an API, tomorrow it's an MCP call that multiple retailers can implement. And we just have our agent go and say, okay, retrieve that, check it, approved. Right? That's the kind of automation that I think an MCP is an example of a standard that's starting to come together that's going to help scale.
And maybe be interested in going to write some MCP standards. That'd be kind of interesting to me. Right?
Well, and you've got Kroger and Amazon and Walmart, and you've got a lot of them on board and engage with you.
Yeah, same thing with the agentic shopping, right? There's a lot of heat and light being generated around that, because if you're a retailer, you're saying, hey, I don't want to get disintermediated by the AI platforms. If you're an AI platform, you're saying, hey, I can engage consumers and help them do discovery so they can find the products they're looking for and then buy. They're all right, but what if we just standardized it so that whether a user went through an LM or they went directly to the retailer or went to their own shopping agent, maybe it doesn't matter, right? Because the sale ultimately happens to the retailer. The brand gets better conversions and better ROI, and the consumer is happy because we, provided them different ways to get to the product they're trying to buy.
And Greg, that was a conversation with Microsoft earlier, right? So that'll be a good one.
I was just going to say, it's also the conversation to that William White it was. Hey, guys, I got a question for you. I don't know if you know. I've asked around about this, not really found anybody who knows anything. You ready? So maybe it's out on the left field, and we can even cut it if it doesn't really make sense. But there's an article in the Wall Street Journal that Walmart was starting to figure out how to target and market to consumers' AI agents. So I've got two questions to make it simple for the reader. First off, what is an AI? I don't know that I have an AI agent yet. I mean, I'd like to. I think that'd be great. So where is that going to come from for me as a consumer? Then how does the marketer see that? And then, do you know what the heck it means to market to a consumer's AI agent?
I think, in the near term, it's probably your favorite LLM, right? Whether it's OpenAI.
So I go to GB5 and I say, hey, tell me how I buy a Bentley or whatever crazy thing.
I just asked, nice car for you, Greg, to buy. But I was just looking at the, we wanted to get silicone cutting boards yesterday, and I literally just did this workflow where I tried to go to Wirecutter, I tried to look at some other sources, and I just said, okay, I'm just going to ask ChatGPT, what are the best, food grade silicone cutting boards, and it gave me 3 options. 2 of them linked to Amazon, But now, what's interesting is whether Amazon paid for that or not. Unclear. Back to your point about needing to have a standard. And then,
I think that's being figured out right now. There's a lot of, as I said, heat and light in the sense that on the retailer side, there's a worry that, all the consumer traffic could get hijacked by the LLMs. Okay, that is a worry.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, we're going to put up firewalls and not let them do any.
That's what Google did to everybody a lot of years ago. They put a level of Formica over the entire. It was a level. It was just a very thin layer of Formica across the entire internet, you went to Google to get everything, right?
Right, but on the other hand, the flip side is, I think what Walmart's talking about, which I think every retailer should think about, is how can I, create a mechanism by which the consumer shopping agent, which today, as I said, is the LLMs, can more quickly and precisely find me and find my product so that I can sell, right? So today the LLMs, you may have noticed this, like as you use them, they're getting better, more and more intelligent about you. Yeah, also, right?
Yeah.
And
the
so
memory
now,
feature, yes.
Yeah, so now when you ask for a product, like your cutting boards or whatever, it sort of remembers maybe 6 months ago you asked for a recipe for something. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, we know that about him, so these are the cutting boards that might be a good fit. I think that's very powerful. I'm super excited about that model because it brings in discovery into the customer journey, which didn't quite exist before, because it was like, here's an ad, click on it, you end up on a retailer page, and you either found out that you ended up on the wrong page and had to go look for the product that you were about to buy, or that wasn't even the product you were going to buy, you were just trying to find a related product. You have to navigate, find it, and then find out it's out of stock.
Yeah, which, by the way, is what happened in my search. Is it gave me a Korean brand that looked really good. I clicked on it, and Amazon was out of stock and no future date for when I could order it. And so back to your point is we need to get a standard for this exchange, because and as much as Amazon would love for me to be in their environment, and much as Walmart would like me to be in their environment and using their bots, and Walmart did develop a agent bot to help you find and discover things. The reality is that game is probably already won by the LLMs, Claude, Anthropic, Copilot. They're likely to be the place. So now the question is, how do you get the exchange so that I don't get pissed off because it's out of stock and feel frustrated that the buying experience doesn't work?
Yeah, exactly. Right? And we've been talking to some of the LLM platforms, and they're taking a little bit of the Amazon playbook, which is be open to working with partners, give them access to APIs they want. We already have several of the APIs, and have got a team looking at what's that model going to look like to connect the retailer, the consumer, and the brand in a place where there's discovery happening, there's personalization happening, and then a transaction can happen more precisely and quickly than the experience you had where you spent maybe half an hour trying to find this product and ended up empty-handed, right? That's a lost sale. It's a lost sale for the brand, lost sale for the retailer, and a frustration for the consumer. So I think it's a powerful model, and we're excited about our conversations and the work we're doing on agentic shopping, because we have actually an early version of it that's coming out in a couple of weeks, which is...
What is agentic shopping?
So it's basically, the idea is if you, so today, right, as Rex was talking about, let's say you were kind of in your office checking your email and you saw an ad for a cutting board and you're like, oh yes, I was thinking of buying a cutting board. You click on it, you end up on the either retailer site or worse on the brand site where you now have to go find a retailer to buy it from. With agentic shopping, at least the model that we're working on, and actually the new feature that we're making available, is when you click on the ad, you actually end up in an LLM. Okay, so, and you don't just end up in an LLM, the prompt is personalized already, right, based on first-party data. So when you land the LLM, it's not going to be, oh, what would you like, Rex? It's more like, here are some cutting boards that we thought would be
you're exchanging some memory features
exactly.
or data.
We're sending some personalization data to the LLM so that the prompt is personalized to you. So you've got a running start to your discovery. Yeah. And the prompt, we're doing a lot of work on prompt personalization, because the more precise the prompt is when you land there, the more likely you are. It may just take you like, I'm ready, where do I buy this product, or where's the best offer for this product, or where's the lowest price for this product, right? There may be different sort of personalized prompts that can kick off that process and essentially get you on either on the path to discovery or get you very quickly through the discovery phase so you're likely to buy, right?
Yeah, I think the interesting part that you've hit on is that there's a huge battle that is just starting, which is, to Greg's point, do the LLMs become the new entry point into everything, the thin layer of Formica he was describing that covers everything, which they might very well become that. Or in your scenario, does it maybe become an entry point, but you're then jumping over to a brand chatbot and LLM that gets to manage that relationship or not? And I think that's a really interesting battle because really the LLM foundational models are counting on the fact that they are becoming the new entry point for everything, right?
Or do I end up with my own agent a la like Do Not Pay, what Josh Brodner has done over there in terms of like he builds agents for consumers, that agent then works for me?
I think that's the vision.
Yeah, that's right.
Greg.
That is
So
the other
that's what I
alternative.
want.
Yeah, when you say personal agents,
Knows my style, knows who I am. I don't want it to depend on the LLMs to catch up. Although I'd love my agent to go grab information from there that they might know about me. That's fine. But making better decisions for me, I'd like to inform somebody to go handle that stuff for me.
Yeah,
I mean,
an
if
assistant.
it's, I think the discovery phase is useful if you don't know exactly what product you want to buy and where you want to buy it from, right? So let's say you're booking a flight to LA, it'd be like, go book a flight to LA, right? It's pretty simple. We say, I'm thinking of taking a vacation, a 3-day vacation, whatever. What destinations can I manage in 3 days, right? And where the weather is, warm or whatever, something like that.
And knows that I like to fly this particular class. I like to have the aisle seat. I like to have this. I like to board, whatever the issues and conditions are. I don't like to, stop. Like it should know. I want somebody to know me.
But Craig,
right?
what you're hitting on is interesting because right now you mainly use ChatGPT. That one is developing a memory of all that information. The question is whether or not they own it or you own it.
Wow.
So that federated data part of saying you own it as consumers and then you get to use it wherever you want to. That's more of what what
somebody's going to give me that
describing.
control. Somebody's going to give me that control. Then it's just a matter of a business model. Do I want to pay for it because it's so good, or I've used some of these like duck bills out there doing the agent thing. It just didn't work. They just didn't know me well enough. Somebody's got to accumulate a lot of information to know me to really serve me, right?
That is the battle for the audience who's listening. That's the one to keep on. So you get to some closing words on this battle. How do you think it's going to end if we look at this in a year, 2 or 3 years from now in terms of who wins the agent war?
Jivox wins.
Well, we're like we're like the picks and shovels guys in the gold rush, right? So regardless of who wins, we hope to profit from that, right? But I actually think all of these can and will be true, right? In the sense that Walmart's going to invest heavily in agents within their sites or the other retailers eventually, so that when you go to Walmart, you have a great experience. But there are users who love ChatGPT, there are others who love Perplexity that just want to stay there and do everything there. So I don't think the idea that any one company, even the most well-funded and the greatest tech, is going to necessarily, it's not going to be, we saw that with Google. So to be fair, we've seen an example of a winner takes all that happened with search.
Tech is always winner take all.
Not always. I think it's an interesting
Almost
debate.
always.
We'll have you back on and we'll check. But
they win. They win until they lose, until they fall behind, and then they get their asses kicked. Exactly, which we could be.
Yeah. Now we've got many. Just because it's such an attractive proposition and money making proposition, we've got a few big heavyweights, several, and not to mention Meta, Google themselves. Fighting OpenAI and Perplexity and so on. So it's not clear who's going to win. I think they'll all capture some market share. And then the retailers themselves, I think, will have to provide that kind of more discovery-oriented experience for consumers. Because ultimately, if you want consumers to come to your site as opposed to go shop through an LLM, you better make the experience at least as good, if not better. Right?
And listen, I think that maybe close this out, Rex, and I'll let you take us out. But listen, I'll tell you the thing that got my attention. Listen, ChatGPT 5, last week's announcement, pretty big deal. Got it. Really loved that. The thing that really caught my attention: 700 million weekly users.
Yeah.
That's crazy. 2 years old now, generative AI?
Yeah.
700 million weekly?
Yeah. And it's habit forming, right? Like you
Totally.
actually it took me a while to switch to ChatGPT. Now I don't use search anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but it took a while. I was like, oh yeah, I played around with it a little bit, and then I got to a point. It's like, this is really good.
Yeah.
Why do I need to do search anymore? I switched.
Well,
so.
and that's the risk I think for Amazon and Walmart is I still go to we use Amazon Prime, so I still go there a lot. But more and more, I'm finding that I'm starting my search for product discovery in an
100%.
LLM in ChatGPT. So
Any kind of complexity to the product, absolutely.
stay tuned to this area. I'm really excited about the work you're doing, especially on trying to build standards and AI agents that will help do the drudgery of getting all the things formatted and moving and so forth. Really excited to stay in touch with you after this podcast. But unfortunately, that's it for this episode of Decoding AI for Marketing. I'm Rex Briggs.
And I'm Greg Stewart.
Yeah.
Be sure to catch all our episodes, plus subscribe, follow, rate, and review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app, or check us out on YouTube. You can get transcripts and more information on our website, decodingaiformarketing.com.
And if you need to learn more about MMA or you want to really know how marketing works, give us a shout, either to me directly or go look at MMAglobal.com. Thanks for listening. Diaz, thank you for doing this with us.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, thanks
for
guys.
being
Good
here.
seeing you. Okay, bye.